Welcome to Soulstrong. I'm Justin Fair, and you're here to find strength in stories, joy and connection, and purpose in every moment. This is a space to explore what it means to find strength, not in being headstrong, but in being soulful, heartfelt, and resonant. Today, we are joined by, drum roll please, Karen Baker, who is the founder of Seven Concepts and the nonprofit organization Social Art and Culture. As former president of the Boathouse Group, Inc., Karen was named one of the 3 women breaking the glass ceiling in the male-dominated tech industry by Forbes 2024. Karen is an award-winning innovator with 25 plus years in marketing and communications, social impact, and design, and 14 years in arts administration. Karen's artistic work, including her work as a weaver and a knitter, is the reason I believe I first met you, Karen, many years ago. I think that was like 2012.
Yeah.
I think
Uh-huh.
you were teaching at GW.
Correct.
I worked at that time with Alex Simpson at the Brentwood Arts Exchange in the Gateway
Mm-hmm.
Arts District.
Correct.
And Alec was so integral, still integral to my development as an artist and as a thriving young Black man. I am mixed
Mm-hmm.
myself. Having mentors and having people
Yes.
around you
Yes.
who guide you in pivotal points in your life,
Yes.
they make the difference between whether you sink or swim.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I exalt
Absolutely.
him. I'm always thankful for him. And I need to reconnect with him. I'm so thrilled because I get to reconnect with you thanks to the magic of LinkedIn.
That's right.
Because you also have some artistic endeavors and are interested
Yes.
in building out community.
Correct.
So now that I've done the proper pitch, Karen, um, tell me, tell our listeners, all 5 to 10 of them, tell me about yourself and what have you been up to lately?
I have always been good at change and transition. I'd say that. Not everybody's great at that, but I don't know that embraces the word, but I do go with the flow of it as well. And I'm always good about checking myself of when it is time for change and transition. And it usually happens around 7 years. And if anybody knows about the number seven, it's the time of ending and transition.
Mm,
And so now I am, after 14 years of being in arts administration through my nonprofit social art and culture, I made the decision to get a PhD in arts administration. And it was something I had to really think about because I was part of me felt with the skills that I have already in marketing communications and events, would they be of value
mhm,
to the industry as I come into the industry? And what I found was they absolutely would be. There was actually gaps in marketing and communications and arts administrators and managers. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of times people are not necessarily formally trained. They come with passion, and they come
mhm,
with an instinct into the position, which is necessary. But
yes.
the training isn't always there to know how to do certain things that I've learned just in 1 year. So that's where I am now. School is year round, so it's full time.
Mm,
And I'm also doing my nonprofit, social art and culture, really trying to build it to the point that it really becomes part of a catalyst system around arts and culture,
mm,
because arts and culture, particularly in this country, I'm going to say, because there's a war view, this is not just administrative driven, but
mhm,
in this administration, there is much attack going on in arts and culture. But throughout the history of the United States, arts and culture has always been a thing they've held with power
mhm,
and has floated the money up and down based on administrations and key stakeholders and, the wealth around it as well too. So those are the things that I'm invested in, and I think this will take me through the transition of what we call retiring.
Retiring is a blessing, but also such a heavy lift.
It is. It is. You really have to. It's another transition, another change. You have to really think
Mhm,
about what that's going to be. and if you've been working, and let's say you do 65, at that point all of your life, and I started working at what, like 15 years old. That's a thing to put down,
Yes.
and it's not easy to put down.
I know the importance of uh, having different waves in your life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
starting at 16
Mhm.
and learning to teach yourself. I know I had a chance to listen to another podcast you did
Mhm.
years ago, Diversity
Mhm.
Beyond the Checkbox with Jackie
Mhm.
Ferguson.
Mhm.
You said there that you were 24 courting these big clients.
Yeah.
Um, I feel I am amazed and delighted because I can only comprehend how does it feel to restart?
Yeah. That's a good question. There's a sense of scariness,
Hmm.
fear that comes with it. I think sometimes you go through the imposter syndrome too. At 24, I didn't go through that though. At 24, there was a boldness that um was like, I'm gonna do this. Nobody's gonna stop me.
Hmm.
Nobody's gonna put me in a box, which I viewed a job as that way. As I started my company at 24 years old. Um, I think more as I got older and any transition, you get more responsibility, and then now I'm a mom as well too. So then you think
Hmm.
more about someone else's life changing around it. But at 24, no, not at all. And I definitely failed, but I got right back up, and when I did, it just took off, and I think from that just taking off, I learned that don't let that fear come over you in that way. Like, what I'm saying, don't let it stifle you, don't let it, stop you in that way, because all this stuff was waiting for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about aspiration and ambition?
Ooh.
'Cause you're
Hmm.
someone who I think is quite ambitious and has
Mm-hmm.
been.
Mm-hmm.
You just said that you're a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, could you speak a little bit about what it means to push forward, especially for things that other people might not see as possible?
Yeah, that's a great one. It actually gives me the chills when you just said that. When you are a person, I'll start this way, who does that, like pushes forward regardless, it is sometimes hard to think that people don't do that, right? I remember I was at BET, and I was there from a contractual standpoint because I had started the business, and they brought me in as a freelancer. And a friend of mine who we become very close, still are to this day, uh, had said to me, Karen, everybody doesn't want to be an entrepreneur. And I said, what? She was like, some people just want a 9 to 5 and they're good. And I had to sit with that, because my ambition was that owning this company, making this company to this particular level. And I had to learn to be just as respectful of someone who was not making that choice, that
Mhm.
path, and making the path to be in a career that would have them working for someone and brought them the same amount of joy, right? And they were just as ambitious as anything else. So I think that I have learned over time, and even in my conversations, to um, really talk to people about where they are, and if that path is their path for ambition, they may achieve to be VP, CEO of XYZ company, is that what they're looking to do? That's not mine for me. It's CEO of my company.
Mhm.
I've always said I'm not giving anybody no more energy at their company than I would my own. Right. So at the end of the day, that's why I've worked for myself so long in doing so. So yeah, I think people have to aspire within their lane, and not, because I've had a lot of people be around myself and they'll be like, "Oh, now I want to be an entrepreneur." And I'll be like, "Halt. Be sure you're ready for this." because it's an undertaking.
Mhm.
It's a mindset, it's financial, there's a lot of risk with it. If you come from a check that comes into your bank account every 2 weeks to a month, that may not happen. So you really have to prepare yourself for jumping into this. So it is not a discouragement, it's just really reality. I want people to have a reality check of what it requires to be an entrepreneur. And sometimes it's a side hustle. Sometimes it's not a full-time thing. So yeah.
So well said.
Yeah.
The ability to split yourself, let alone split your time and your interests and the people around you, is a skill. And it's a hard one. I I was reminded when I was digging up some dirt on you that about your work weaving and knitting, and
Uh-huh.
at what point that became your focus versus a
Yeah.
side hustle. How have you shifted and grown with your art over the years?
Yeah, then that's a continued shifting, I think. As an artist, it really is. It's,
Hmm.
it's continuous shifting. I came into knitting when I was at Savannah College of Art and Design. There
Yes.
was a woman who was in the department at SCAD who was responsible for people who were uh, actually deaf. And so she decided to go get a creativity coaching certification, which does exist for those who don't know. And she put out an email and said, I'm in the process of getting my 100 hours to complete my certification. If anybody's interested in being one of the persons that I coach, email me. I emailed her automatically because this is the first time I had been in art and design school. And so I had a little struggle going on in my head about just artistic practice.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need some help because I'm not used to this feeling. I'm not used to this up and down. And so I started with Beverly Williams is her name, and Beverly will always be someone I will be grateful for. We coached for a year and a half, and she was the one that said to me, what do you need to pick up that you have left? Do you need to pick up and start again to help you through the anxiety that you're dealing with as an artist?
Mm.
And so I told her, I said, I used to crochet when I was young and I loved it. I said, I crocheted and I sewed and I put all of that down. She said, well, why don't you pick that back up? And I said, okay. So I picked back up the crocheting and I started seeing knitting and I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. I like the difference in the stitching. And I said, so I'm going to go learn to knit. So this woman was teaching knitting on Capitol Hill at a Starbucks. And I went one day and I went one class and she taught me, her name was Terry. And so she taught me how to knit. She said, you're never going to crochet again after I teach you how to knit. I said, no, not possible.
Not
Sh-
possible.
So she did, and I never crocheted again after that. So I realized from knitting this meditation that was coming
Hmm.
along with it, and the repetitiveness was relaxing my mind. And then I started to really pay attention to it as an artist, and a designer. And then I got hit to, I was like, love textiles, always has. Started paying attention to weaving. Then met a master Ghanaian weaver. And he showed me all his stuff. I mean, he added the history into it, which I was like, I've always been behind that, being a political science major at Howard. So then I started weaving. So it all just kind of snowballed, throughout the process of it. And that's what I was like, this is something that I see myself doing as an artist, not as a hobby. And I
Hmm.
really wanted to support those who saw it as something they could not create a career out of, that they could create a career out of it. So I started to surround myself with community that was in the craft full time. And because I was like, this is the way to see yourself getting to this point, is to do that. I stopped being around people who only viewed it as a hobby and being around people who this was how they were making a living. And then that changed my perspective.
I love that notion of really understanding what becomes, I can make a career out of this, or I can
Yeah.
teach others that they are.
Yeah.
When I remembered or with GW, when
Hmm.
I was at College Park, I guess I graduated in 2010.
Okay.
Corcoran there was some talks about, will Corcoran
Mhm.
merge with a neighboring school? Will it just close?
Yeah.
What will happen with its art collection?
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
we can't lose all of this, that this
Mhm.
institution
Mhm.
without, like we there's a lattice of other institutions that can pick up those pieces, and I was so happy to hear that it got incorporated. Um,
Correct.
but I was just reminded as you were speaking, people don't often think about what it means to teach, the
Yeah.
importance of it. And I know the organization Fiber with a Cause,
Mhm.
um, that is about education, and
Yeah.
and weaving textiles is not just solely a vocation of people might say it's women's work.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it is. I was just blessed to see the show Black Woman Genius over at the
Oh.
Reginald F. Lewis Museum
Oh, is it okay? I have to
over
go see it. Oh,
in Baltimore.
yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so it's the exhibition is Elizabeth Telford Scott.
Okay.
She was a mother. She became this key figure for fiber arts.
Yeah.
She has since, had she's had her work has been exhibited at
Mhm.
Coppin, at Johns Hopkins, at
Mhm.
Micah, at
Mhm.
Morgan.
Mhm.
Um, I was so thrilled to get to see her exhibition because it
Mhm.
reminded me that, the world of textiles,
Mhm.
there it's a different thing than painting. It's a different
Yeah.
thing than
Yeah.
design. It's a different thing than writing. There's
Yeah.
an intuitive, an emotional, a
Yeah.
practice of
Yeah.
how you store your work when you're not working on it,
That's very true.
what you go back to when the day is hard and you just need to get your hands busy and
Yeah.
you meditate a bit.
Yeah.
I think for me that notion of understanding not just the metaphor of weaving, but the literal practice of, is this tight enough? Have I
Yeah.
have I
That's right.
balanced this? Oh crap, I have a knot here that I did not see happening. It's
Mm.
I admire that so much, and I
Oh,
just
I
so
appreciate you saying that. You named all the little things.
I really just think it's like it shows me how important that skill set is,
Yeah.
and I'm just so delighted that that you could bring share that tidbit,
Yeah.
and that wealth of information, because it's not just, oh yeah, I did that, it's
Yeah.
how I did that.
Exactly. Exactly. That is so important. I think the process, uh, I took a textile design history course from the person. She runs the Cotson collection at the Textile Museum, Cartico. It's another one I'll always be. She has told me to, Karen, I will support your work to the end. And she has been such an amazing mentor for me because she introduced me to all of these geographical cultures in weaving. And most of it's weaving, even though it's textile, a lot of them weave because she is a weaver
Mhm.
herself. And just knowing that level of history, some of it goes back, BC, as far as
Right.
textile is concerned. And I think that, I don't know. Yeah, I do. In the United States, there's not the level of appreciation
Mhm.
that it needs to be. But as I, began to learn about, Bangladesh and got to learn about Japanese culture around
Mhm.
textile and Europe, you know, and these histories were so far back. And then when we got to the US, it became like after the civil rights movement, so
Mm.
it's very young, it's very young compared. So it's like there's, this tracing of history, and Library of Congress has something called Threads of something they call Threads of the World or something. It's a trace of textile through the world is what they've done. And it's been around for a time, but you would have to go looking for it to know. But it is this whole cultural aspect of textiles. I think a lot of times it drives the conversation, maybe even drives the positioning of why people in the United States would who enjoy textile and fiber don't initially go to it for a career. They fall into it from a hobby and then hope to make it that versus I am absolutely going into this as an industry,
Hmm.
and I think because we just don't have a long history in it.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Library of Congress website for threads and words.
Yes, that's it.
Um,
That's
and
it.
it just reminds me that uh, so often I think people are, they take for granted the things that they wear, they take for granted,
Yeah.
um, but there's an innate, obviously it's tech, it's linen, it's wool,
Mm-hmm.
all those fiber types.
Mm-hmm.
It's this immensely tactile process.
Correct.
And when you see something and you think, how did that happen?
Yeah.
It is often because someone said, I'm going to make that my job because
Yeah.
that is how we produce goods. And what
Correct.
became art was the masters
That's right.
saying, well, I'm going to do this on the side because this is going to give me joy.
Yep, that's right.
Um,
That's
and
right.
I just want to note, from the ethnographic perspective,
Uh-huh.
um, it, in order to grow a culture forward, you have
Uh-huh.
to know where you come from
That's
on
right.
some level.
That's right.
And I do wish that we had, pre-civil civil rights movement, that there was a heavier acknowledgement
Yeah.
of people in our country as a whole who
Yeah.
moved their mediums forward.
That is so
Um,
true.
it's
Absolutely
it's
correct.
one of those weird things where it seems like our, Baltimore City,
Mm-hmm.
where I am,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the mayor Scott just announced a new office of arts and culture. Public and private partnerships are necessary
They
in,
are.
or I work by day in community development as a community, planner,
Mm-hmm.
and developer, and so often, what people forget is that the humanities tell our stories.
Yeah.
If we don't tell our stories, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes,
That's
and
right.
we're doomed to not really pay attention. How
That's
many
right.
things, so, uh,
That's
all
what's
that said,
happening now. That's what's happening now.
it is what's happening now, on the national federal stage.
Yes.
The shame is that, it it burns at people. It
Yeah.
burns away the strands, and it
Yeah.
burns, the core facets of what make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You can't, um, it's the artist's job, yes, to respond and to uh, create,
Mm-hmm.
that can, I think, be accessible. The
Yes.
challenge is that by flooding the landscape, the current administration and
Mm-hmm.
the people who think like them,
Mm-hmm.
they don't want people to have the bandwidth.
Correct. Correct.
When you burn out, I was just watching a special on the impact of TikTok and social media,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and how, the shorter attention spans mean that younger people, um, they're basically speeding up the videos that we might watch at regular speed.
Mm.
And of course, not everyone does this, but
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that means people learn how to process information a little bit faster in order
Okay.
to fight the overwhelm.
I see. I see. I see. That makes sense though. It
It makes
does.
sense. I just hope that people remember they have to bring that fire. They have
Yeah.
to brainstorm. They have to make sparks. With more,
Correct.
the challenge with social media is that it's still a visual medium.
Correct.
So you're not going to go in person and touch something.
That's
You're not
right.
you're not as likely, unless it's oh, we're going to make this art exhibition into a viral experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's it's the tale as well as time. It's hard to get people to come to stuff.
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
but one of the things that I've always loved is that joy of saying, like, I'm going to an experience later
That's
on
right.
today.
That's right.
That is the joy of it. Like,
Yeah, and that's human nature. And I don't care how much people try to push it down.
mm,
It's human nature. I remember, um, it must have been a class I took. I took a course at Smile Herb Shop.
yeah.
Yep, I took with the owner at the time. I took a course in understanding Ayurveda. And one of the number one things that they say is that touch is one of the best healers for anyone.
Mm,
And that's what comes with a live experience, right? Is this
mhm,
this sense of energy, this sense of community, this sense of, even if someone's closest to you, that feeling, is what live experiences bring. So I do hope that we don't get into a world where we don't come up for air for that.
mhm.
I think that regardless of all that's going on and how damaging it is, I think that what it has and is doing is making it so that people want to come into community more.
Yeah.
Even if they're gathering to protest, even if they're gathering to state their voice, they're gathering, right?
Mhm.
They know that that this social media is not the way in which they want their voice to be heard, right? They want to show up and be seen as well as be heard. And so I think that if we could continue to not lose that, we'll be better as a society. Yeah.
Very well said. You know,
Thank you.
society needs people to drive others forward,
Yeah.
and I always have to remind myself in my line of work that you've got people who want to check others to make sure things are working. You've
Mm-hmm.
got people who they're always going to be helpers
Mm-hmm.
who want to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to inspire people and pull them out and make them feel
Mm-hmm.
engaged.
Yeah.
Um, I've noticed I was getting a haircut the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a sign on the wall that said "hustle,"
Did it.
and I was like, okay, cute, but also like it's so important to know uh, who you are so that you know what type of activity you want to do.
That's right.
Because some people, their best role isn't going, it's not hustling to me is not just um, pushing for the sake of pushing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the wider practice of pushing, pulling,
Mm-hmm.
waiting, you know, again back
Mm-hmm.
to fiber and flax and all the rest of that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't you got to work with the material that's there. Um,
Yeah,
and you can't do that if you yourself are burnt out or
that's right.
you're going from, moment to moment to moment to moment without
That's right.
perspective.
That's right. That's right. Well said, though. Well said. And when you said a word about helper, because I've always said to people, leaders need people to be part of their team, right? So,
Yeah,
we don't need everybody to want to be a leader.
absolutely.
I mean, you need people who are going to be there to drive forward your vision, and they need to be excited about what they do, you know. And
Hmm.
so there comes in, that particular word, because you need to look around and everybody's like, I got you, and they take their place within the realm of the hustle. Because otherwise you're gonna be rolling solo, and five people trying to be leaders or something is never is gonna work. Again, that's what's happening now.
I think that it is so weird to me how many people can't seem to break themselves out in that leadership tree
Yeah,
of
that's true.
what are you good at, where can you fit.
That's right.
I think it's often, I mean, I will say with I'm on a few nonprofit boards
Hmm.
because I do too much. um, and as I'm learning what it means to pace and definitely what it means to rest, I've come
Hmm.
to understand that it's about encouraging other people to embrace the role that they really want,
That's
not the
right.
role that they have.
That's right.
And I just want to say, you spoke earlier about your arts administration degree. That is, I think, one of the best roles of arts management, which
Yeah.
is to say to people, this is what you are good at. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I hear you saying you want to do.
Uh-huh.
This is how we're going to make that happen. But
Mm-hmm.
it is really about, it reminds me of the role of a director in theater. It's
Ah,
not that
mm-hmm.
they themselves are going to do all the things.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
that they are nurturing and delegating and ordering people.
Yeah, and they are very good at seeing the fact that Karen or Justin are better at this role than they are at the one they came to me that they would like to do. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
Well,
saying?
that is the, I think some of my best. I spoke earlier about Alec Simpson. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is one of the best things I've come to understand, which is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you start, when I
Mm-hmm.
started at the Arts Exchange so many years ago, I was just out of college.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was doing the art gallery circuit, trying
Mm-hmm.
to, create enough work to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned at that point that I really did like what I came to realize was community planning. Um,
Mm.
I started off thinking about myself as an arts manager and an
Okay.
administrator, and I soon realized I was like, I'm in an arts district in
Yeah.
Prince George's County. I am going
Yeah.
to find my people
Yeah.
while I'm here. And that was one of the best choices that I made. And it wasn't just me making it, it was
Yeah.
having people like Alec to say, I see you are good at this.
Mm-hmm.
This may keep you for a few years. This may keep you for much longer. You'll always have this to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that is one of the biggest joys of understanding, is this going to be my job? Is this going to be something I will do later on?
Yep.
Because that is how you understand. Um, I am not going to burn myself out on this
That's right.
versus this is going to be the thing that I go back to when I need to chill. And
Yeah,
it's okay not to
absolutely.
do everything all at once. I just had a woman that I know who got me involved in a leadership organization here in Baltimore, not LA. She said to me, um, when I said to her that I couldn't be on any more boards, I was tired, I don't want to burn out on anybody. She said, well, good. You're young. You've got 30, 40 more years, 50, of energy in you, right? And I love that because I met a woman the other day who was 82
Mm-hmm.
at a class I was at.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm still gonna do stuff.
Yeah.
And that is for me the joy of it because like,
Yeah.
you're here to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
um as you referenced earlier, um getting your degree,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you've been doing something related but not the same for so long,
Yeah.
is a new, your foot you're slamming your foot on the ground. You're saying,
Yeah.
I am here. You're saying,
Yeah.
look, I got this background, but I also have this passion that I want to enjoy and share.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you
Absolutely.
know yet how you will be enjoying and sharing your arts administrative passions once
That's
the
a good
degree finishes?
good timing on that because I just did my dissertation concept.
Mm,
And so I know that entrepreneurship will be part of it for sure. And they have encouraged me to use that because of being an entrepreneur so long.
yeah.
And so the point I'm at right now is that it will be focused on textile fiber, African American stories, but I want to move it into contemporary space. So I'm like, what is missing? And what I do see missing, is what we talked about earlier, is the career path that is really set for anyone coming in school or coming into it like I did, where it's a passion turned into, you know, trying to turn it into profit.
Hmm.
How do you create a career path? How do you create entrepreneurs? You know, whether you turn around and own your own yarn shop,
Hmm.
or you turn around and you own a textile mill, which there's so few that are actually, maybe the last one I met, that was owned by a white woman. They just closed down. They
Mm,
survived through COVID and then couldn't go past COVID, which is what a lot of businesses dealt with too.
mhm,
Beautiful stuff. Got some things from her. They've been around for some time, so they weren't new. And then I was told last year that they closed down. No African American woman owns a textile mill, hasn't in its history
mm,
of owning mills as well too. So, what is the career path that not necessarily success, but just get someone, like I said, to be able to use textile and fiber as a career? Can a 17-year-old be in school and say, I want to be a textile designer? Now, I have never heard that. I have heard fashion designer, but not
mhm,
textile designer. And then a lot of times people get into fashion school and they get hip to textile and
mhm.
then they want to move. So, can we create a career path for someone that young? Can we make it so that someone wants to be an entrepreneur, even owning a farm that produces wool, produces indigo, produces cotton, can we create that? So that is the route that I'm looking at my dissertation being in arts administration. And that is where Fiber with a Cause will come in, because that is what it was meant to do from the beginning.
Mhm.
I said in my dissertation presentation, I paused it as I figured out how I fit into this. And now that I know how I fit into this, Fiber with a Cause will be that medium. It will be that place that people can go and build a career, and we can actually nurture them into entrepreneurship.
I'm so thrilled for that.
Thank you.
And excited. In Baltimore, there's a couple indigo farms, including one that my office, my work, the state of Maryland, has put some money into. And I think that process of there's so much in farming, but
Mm-hmm.
also in the milling, also in the community engagement aspect,
Mm-hmm.
that people, it's sort of, to me, that is like the future of what we all need, which is to
Yeah.
turn, um, from a planning perspective, I want to see
Yeah.
these green lots, that can be, they are ripe ground as long as you
Yep.
can work on the soil, clean it up, make
Yep.
sure that it is available and accessible. But
Mm-hmm.
it, unfortunately, it does take a few years of a pilot,
It
and
does.
an investment,
It
especially in
does.
communities where you don't have, a large, fiber manufacturer
No.
leading the way. It is a smaller enterprise, but
Correct.
that is, especially now that our country is redirecting its efforts on being built and made in America.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That is hopefully how local artisans, and in this case growers, have the ability to
Correct.
reclaim land,
Correct.
um, and to make people, clearly, the neighbors around those areas will
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, that is a textile fiber farm.
That's right. That's right. That sounds so good for you to say. It
uh, I,
sounds so amazing.
I look forward to this, fiberwithacause.com. I'm going to keep
Yes.
my eyes on it.
And the two you're talking about with the indigo thing, they have been the blueprint for a lot of people. Just even having the financial backing of a state was huge. I mean, I remember when I first sat in on the first webinar to introduce the fact that this was actually happening. I was like, this must have been around 20, maybe 19 or so. And I was like, what? Kind of wowed by it because, as you talk about the community planning and you falling into it, which I so appreciate, Justin, because I'm in the
Mhm.
process. This is my last week of taking an urban planning course.
Aha.
And yeah, and I'm like, ooh, this is good stuff. This is how, and this is what's missing. So kudos to you for understanding this early. This is what's also missing for those who are in art administration is understanding city urban planning and how it plays into art and
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah.
So
Well,
learning all of these terms and learning all of this, people who have been fighting for equity throughout the
mhm.
time has been really exciting. And I know that it'll play into the work because, again, we're talking about bringing, as they say, place and space into Fiber with a Cause.
But all those things take on a new uh, element when you realize, well, who had the access 100 years ago to work in this field?
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
prevented and enabled 50 years ago? What's being accessed now?
Yeah.
Those things, like that notion of urban farming,
Yeah.
that notion of utilizing the people who live in a neighborhood and teaching them the skill and all that,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
is to me like the way forward
Mm-hmm.
for communities that have lost hundreds of thousands of people over
Mm-hmm.
the decades to their surrounding jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because and that was one thing I pitched with my thesis, tiny houses and the Black experience in Baltimore,
Oh, nice.
was listening to people, surveying and understanding that there are people who do want to appreciate the land around them,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
you often do need to create a little green oasis in
Yeah.
order for other people to say, this is worth investing in this plot of land
Yeah.
and reinvesting in it and sharing and building up around it. And
Yeah.
that is a different mechanism, especially when it comes to banking, than a lot of people realize. Because as you said, as you noted, you have to have a model you can point to.
Yeah.
Somebody has to push it.
Yeah.
Um, and those things often do take time because they're not, you don't get a wild investor who wants something because it's about reinvestment,
Yeah.
and they often won't, they need to know what the return is going to be.
That's right. That's right.
um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that is where I find public partnerships to be so integral,
I
because
do too.
you have the state, for instance, but also federal government, they can invest, they have pots of money
Yeah.
exactly for these purposes, to create and engender innovation
Mm-hmm.
and checks and balances to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that the work is not falling off or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, losing traction because of one bad actor. They can redirect
Yeah.
and invest, but
Yeah.
it does take innovative, intelligent people who have worked in this field,
Right.
who have bridged themselves so that they know that this isn't going to be a rare good, but something
Yeah.
that can truly lift off. And I for one am very excited about that. And I
Yeah.
encourage everyone to go to their local urban farms and to spend some time in nature, but also
Yes.
to realize you don't have to do a lot. You just got to go a little bit,
That's right.
appreciate, maybe give a
That's
little
right.
donation, call it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Exactly. And they always, looking for volunteers, people to help them. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Planting seeds, particularly this time of year. Everybody is, these seed parties and whatever,
Seed parties, yes.
yeah, so that you can come and help them. Because again, it is definitely, particularly this area, I'll say, because I don't know about anywhere else. The farming community is small, and
So
so and the amount of labor that they have is small. So when you have a community, on residents in that community that are understanding and invested in the fact that this is needed and necessary, I don't think we can do without, then they will come and support it, with their dollar or their hands, either one, and we need it. We need it.
yeah,
So I'm
no,
excited.
it's very cool. Please keep me up to date.
I will. I will.
So, Karen, I think we're coming up on time. This has
Yeah,
been a true blessing and a joy for me.
same for me. This is
Um,
cool.
Thank you again for this wonderful conversation. Um, and stay soul strong.
This is great. I love the day too, Dustin. This is amazing. Thank you for the conversation. I get a chance to talk about something that I'm moving into and been passionate about for a long time. So I appreciate you being one of the first.
Oh, God bless.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.